in and ask questions. Thank you, Ariel. We got this together. Okay, so for the ones that are new to living well fit, we have 4 calls. Let me make sure that if you can all please make sure that you are muted. That will help me a lot. Think there you go. I think that I have muted everybody. If you can check, help me. But 4 calls. The first call, the one of the calls is this topic call. In this topic call, we are just actually doing mainly training. And then what I will ask you, if we have time at the end to have questions, try to make sure that the questions are related to the topic, because you also have other three calls where you do check-ins, where you can ask your general questions about living well fit. This call is not about general questions about well fit. This call is mainly about gut health. And then when our amazing Ariel talk about gut health, if you have questions related to what she just said on gut health, those questions will be welcome, depending on if we have time to answer questions, because it's a training class, so she's packed with a lot of information for you. With that being said, next check-in call is next Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the morning. That is for our Aussies and Kiwis. So our amazings, Michelle and Clint, are going to be there. And then the following week, we have our 2 p.m., 3 p.m. coaching call, 3 p.m. call the following week. Oh, no, next. I have this mess up, Ariel. Is next week is 3 p.m., right?
No.
No.
You're the one that knows.
I
can't
know.
keep track of it. I'm so
I know
impressed with you for being able to keep
this
track.
baby is killing me, you guys. Okay, so next week we have this week we have the topic call. Next week we have 2 a.m. Michelle and Clint, and then July 28th we have Ariel at 3 p.m. and then August 4th is the following one at 6 p.m. But with that being said, I am very excited today to introduce you to our guest speaker in the topic call, because she is not only our master coach for WildFit, one of the best coaches, holistic coaches that I ever met in my life, but also is able to put together the best of living WildFit and eating healthy with ancient medicine, ancient wisdom that she's been studying for decades around Chinese medicine, Ayurveda medicine, Indian medicine. And if that was not enough, she also is what we call a geek. And she loves reading and studying and all those things. So she's also always in the cutting edge of research about health and well-being. So you guys are up. I know that all of you love her, but I want to reinforce that you are up for a treat today on this hour with Ariel. Ariel, my dear, take it on and blow our minds away as always with gut health and how we can support our living well fit style with gut health.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Joanna, for such a fabulous introduction. You made a big fat claim for me, so now I'm going to have to live up to it. Um, Everyone, first of all, we have over 100 people on this call, and I don't know anywhere else in the world where people would be so excited to learn about gut health. Like, I put together a program last year and I was sure that it was going to be so successful. I'm like, yeah, it's a gut healing cleanse, it's a gut healing workshop. And I received feedback from like 4 different people, and they were like, gut is a really ugly word. Like, I don't know if you want to be talking about the gut when you're talking about healing. But of course, all of us here, we know and understand that the gut really has more to do with our digestive system, right? And at this point in our Living Wild Fit journey, we also recognize that the gut is the first place that we need to be healthy. If we can make our gut healthy and make it functional in the most optimal way for our health, then everything else in our body and in our health is going to fall into place. So before I really jump in, I would just love to see in the chat, um, what is your number one thing that you know about the chat, or I'm seeing your messages about my volume. I have my volume at 100%. Going to check my speakers and they're on properly.
And I hear you right. So I don't know why we are having some um
Can you guys hear
that
me okay?
that is what they were saying. That one of them is saying like that if you compare your volume with mine, that is what they, maybe some of them are saying that that is low for you because I'm being like too loud. So I will chill out.
I wonder. Well, okay. If you guys can hear me okay, it's hearable, but is it good?
It's
I'll put
hearable.
this-
It's not
Okay,
great.
we're gonna. Okay, volumes matched. So I would love to see in the chat, how do you feel your gut health is now? Gut just being, how are you digesting your food? When you put something into your mouth, do you feel like, yeah, I'm definitely getting the most out of that food? Or are you feeling like there's room for improvement? Maybe you could have less bloating. Maybe you could have less gas coming out either end when you are eating. Maybe you could have less discomfort or better track time. So what do you know so far about your gut? So we're seeing pretty good, so much better since WILDFIT. That's definitely a win. So overall, guts are pretty happy, but they could be better. And definitely that's the case for most humans across the board. For anyone who's on social media, you may have seen these images recently. And the whole idea is that people are posting about body positivity. So there are fitness athletes with like no fat on them, and they're posing in their gym clothes. And it's like, this is me first thing in the morning. And this is me after I've had a meal. And then their stomach is all distended and they look about 6 months pregnant. And they're saying, this is normal. And I'm like, you're not normalizing a healthy body. You're normalizing gut problems. Like you are probably eating way too much whey protein or dairy or wheat or something is going on in there and it's causing a really unhappy belly. So what we really want to start normalizing as we advance our WILDFIT journey into health is that when you eat food, you're going to completely digest it and get all of the nutrients out of that food so that you have strong nails, strong hair, clear skin. These are all signs that your digestion is working really well. Also, that you don't even necessarily notice after you've eaten. You might feel significantly heavier if you are aware of your body and you're really checking in with your body and you're checking in with your hungers. However, you are not going to notice that you're getting bloated. You're not going to notice that you're swelling around your middle after meals. You're not going to notice that you are belching or getting lots of gas or getting sleepy after meals. It's just like your meal is passing through and that's not your focus. And then on the other end, you're having at least 1 to 2 bowel movements every single day, that those bowel movements are smooth and easy to pass, and that they're not overly gross, to use a very scientific term. You know, like they're not really smelly, they're not really weird looking, they're just sort of the way that we imagine that they ought to look, with some variance, right? Depending on what we're eating. So this is what we're aiming for. This is the goal in our digestive process. And today we are going to talk about how to create that and why it's so important to create that. So as I started to say,
gut health has really gained traction in the last decade. And scientists are really starting to pay attention to it because we now understand that we don't just have one brain, we actually have three main energy centers and nervous systems in our body. The first one, of course, lives in our head. The second one is in our heart. And the third and arguably most important one is our enteric nervous system that exists in and around our GI tract. So we have this system of about 100 million nerve cells that runs all the way from our esophagus down to our rectum. And what we know about this nervous system is that it is continually sending feedback to our heart brain and to our head brain about the food that we're eating, about how it's being digested, about resources that it needs from other organs to get the job done. And that's a two-way system, so that our head is also sending messaging down to our gut. So if you ever been really nervous for a presentation, if you ever been really stressed, maybe you're one of those people that you go on a trip and it interrupts your entire track time. Either it speeds things up in a way that you really don't want, or it slows things down in a way that makes you very uncomfortable. Anyone experience this? So this is just one way that we can see how much our mood and our stress level affects our gut. And then, of course, we know that a lot of the serotonin, the happy hormones that we're producing in our body, happen in and around the gut. And it depends on a healthy gut in order to produce that serotonin. So our gut health is also responsible for our overall mood and sense of well-being. And this is why we are starting to pay so much attention to this. And really, we're recognizing more and more from all of these different psychological studies that if people are dealing with innumerable mental health diseases, things from depression or, manic depression, people with anxiety, people with autism, all over the spectrum of these illnesses, it's related to the health of the gut and possible allergies that occur in the gut. So it's really important, not only for us, but the health of our families, to really understand the basics of how this works. And then I'm going to answer your questions if you are experiencing any of these disorders for yourself and how potentially to fix that. Now, I'm not going to go too much into all of the science because I'm sure that it's going to bring back memories of maybe that picture that you saw in biology of the open mouth and then this windy track that goes all the way down to the sphincter at the end, and everyone was giggling because it's like, hee hee, that's your bum hole. Anyone remember that image? So I'm not going to stand up with a pointer and like point out how everything works, but essentially, here's the takeaway that I would like you to have. Maybe in that same biology class, you were asked to dissect an earthworm. Did anyone do that when you were in science class, maybe in middle school, where you had to take this poor worm and use the scalpel and divide it down the middle and then pin it side to side and then look at what's going on in the inside? So if anyone had to endure the horror of that, you probably saw that an earthworm is simply a tube, and then when you open them up, there's not much going on. There's just one single tube on the inside, and then there's like a little bulge where the heart is, and then it moves all the way down to the other end. And that's essentially their entire digestive tract, right? Humans are not that much more complicated. We think that we are more complicated and we act like we're more complicated, but all of our hardware and software that we have as we are walking around on a daily basis essentially is just the programming and support system for this tube that we have within our outer tube. So really, if we're thinking about it, right? As we're walking around in these city lives that we have, and we're so sophisticated and we have all of these jobs, we often forget that all of our programming at one point essentially had one purpose. And that was feed myself so that I grow to sexual maturity, be strong enough that I have the opportunity to find a mate, be strong and healthy enough that I can produce healthy offspring, stay strong enough that I can protect them until they can fend for themselves, and then I'm done. Right? From a biological perspective, we are essentially just trying to pass along our genes. So if we look at it through that lens, it really makes so much sense that everything within our body is just focused on protecting our digestive tract. Our eyes, they're looking for threats and opportunities, as Eric says. And then we also have our ears, they're listening for those opportunities and those threats. And that connects to our entire nervous system, which tells us when we need to run like heck, or when we have to fight, or when we have to freeze. Making sense so far? And then we also have all of our muscle and our structural system to move us around to look for food. Now, what happens when that food actually makes its way into our body? We have this submarine-like system, if we want to think about it that way. And the food has to pass through all of these channels, and there's this interlocking system all the way through. And as the food moves throughout our body, each room looks a little bit different. So the room inside our mouth, it's filled with digestive enzymes that are there to break down the starches and carbohydrates. So the food has to spend a good amount of time there to make sure that it's small enough and it's broken down into teeny tiny pieces, and that all of our saliva can mix with it so that it can actually feel comfortable making its way through the next room, which is our esophagus. So now as food is traveling through this next room down this tube within our throat, our movement as well as this natural movement of the throat is pushing our food down, and the starches are continuing to be digested until they get into the next room. The next room is a bit more of a party, right? This is our stomach. Our stomach is also incredibly acidic compared to the alkaline environment in our mouth and in our throat. So as things get from the esophagus into the stomach, that party amps up. There's a lot of movement, a lot of dancing, a lot of churning. But at this point, all of the digestive enzymes that were breaking down the starches and the carbohydrates, they die. They can't exist in this environment. The stomach is so acidic because it's meant to kill off a lot of the parasites and the bad bacteria and the other stuff that might have hitchhiked into our body as we ate that food. So now the stomach starts the process of breaking apart all of the fat and all of the protein that we eat. So this is a chemical process because of all of that acid and the gastric juices. But we also know, if we've ever felt, acid reflux and heartburn, that there's this huge chemical aspect as well. I'm just going to check in for a second. Are you listening, or are you gonna Eric, I can't do two
Are
things
you
at once.
feeling anxious because I'm here, Ariel? I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
I'm just seeing my anxiety is like, is he wanting to speak? Would he like to add to the presentation? Is he taking notes because of my fabulous presenting style?
I'm just here hanging out with everybody. That's all. You
Okay,
carry on.
Perfect. I'll let you do your thing in the chat. So once everything is broken up small enough from the party in the stomach, and this is all done by these little microsensors that exist around the stomach, and it creates this mixture that's called chyme. Once the body feels like, yeah, okay, everything's small enough, then it has to squeeze through this little tiny door at the bottom of the stomach and make its way into the small intestine. Now, once it gets there, that's when things really start to get interesting. Who remembers little Mr. Pancreas? Anybody remember that story, little Mr. Pancreas? So this is where he really shines because he's done all his work and he's created all of these different digestive enzymes. And then he gets to push them out into the small intestine so that they can start to break down the fat and really get it digested. So in the stomach, that's where the protein is partially digested. But the fat, it doesn't really get digested there. It just gets broken into smaller globules. If you ever shaken a bottle with water and fat combined in it, you notice how the fat gets into these little tiny bubbles. So that's what's happening in the stomach. And then when it gets down into the intestines, the intestinal cells can really start to work with it and pull it apart and get it into this teeny tiny little building blocks that we need to make up all of the components of our cells. So again, not getting too much into the science of this, but what I want you to imagine for the entirety of your intestines is that it looks like maybe a sea anemone. For some people, they love that image, or a silicone sponge with all of these different prongs. Anyone picturing that? Some people like to see it as finger projections, right? All of these little tiny fingers that are grabbing at food. And the reason that all of these projections exist is so that there's more surface area for your intestinal cells to grab onto the nutrients and pull them down into the bloodstream. Now, in a healthy system, no problem, right? We have these little villi, the finger-like projections, and they're actually protected by a layer of good mucus. So not the kind that you think of when you have a really bad cold and it's all like yellow and green and sort of funky looking. It's the really healthy, clear mucus that is actually protecting these fingers from the abrasion of all of that food passing by. And then on the outside of that mucus, there's actually even little protective cells that are like standing there and wondering, are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? Now, on each of these little fingers, it's almost like, do you guys remember airports? Good times, right? So if you haven't been in an airport in, say, 1 to 2 years, just going to remind you of what you might have to go through at customs. So you're standing there in line and you're waiting to get through, right? And then there's all of these security guards and they're scanning you with these protocols. Like, does this person look dangerous? Does this person look like they might be a threat to me? Does this person look like they're going to be safe going through? And then you have to pass through this gate in order to get to the other side where they're like, yeah, you're okay. We'll keep an eye on you, but you can get on the plane. So all of these villi have similar cells and they are on a continual basis going, okay, you're good, you can go through. Sir, you need to stop. You're not allowed in. You can pass on to the anus. We don't need you. And if your gut is healthy, then that process is happening very, very quickly, no problem. However, the cells need the mucus up front to form the queue. So we can think of the mucus as being all of those little dividers that keep us moving through like cattle. So without that mucus, when everyone can storm the gate, that's when chaos really starts to happen. So what can break down all of these little dividers and basically these partitions in the queue? Well, things like refined sugar, they rip on through and knock them down. All of the processed foods that we learn about in week 5 of the challenge, they also rip apart these partitions. If we're introducing anything like gluten, where we have these large globular proteins that roll on through, kind of like this mafia gang, they also cause a lot of problems. So as all of these partitions are ripped down, then these security guards, I mean, they have training, they're good at their jobs, but if they're faced with this horde of customers all coming through at once, chances are that a few people are going to get through that maybe shouldn't be getting through to the plane, if you know what I mean. So now we can think of this plane as essentially everything moving through your bloodstream, right? And within your bloodstream, you have your immune system. The immune system, what's it meant to be doing? It's looking for threats. It's looking for foreign invaders. That's its whole job. But if we have all of these big globular proteins that are getting through when they shouldn't be, and sugar is just bulldozing its way in and it's not supposed to be there, and all of these different processed elements and different fungi that are bad fungi and parasites and different bacteria are all getting onto this plane, it's not going to be a great place. And now our immune system is going to have to be in overdrive trying to handle national security. And you can imagine it's not really going to go well. So I digress. Let's imagine that your gut is still healthy and everything is moving along like it's meant to be doing. Everything moves through your small intestine, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you forget from your middle school biology, this whole process, even though some of us are quite short, others we're kind of tall, but we have about 9 meters of action happening here. So it's sort of like a switchback on a mountain. It's going back and forth and in and over, and it's a very dynamic process, and it's all squished into this teeny tiny area. But as this process is moving along and food is moving along, all of these nutrients are being absorbed and digested. And then we get down to another little sphincter at the bottom. And this opens up into our large intestine, right? Or otherwise known as the colon. Now, you've heard about this a little bit in your WILDFIT challenge. But really what we want to understand here, and the reason that gut health is becoming so well known, is that we actually have trillions, imagine that, trillions of different bacteria that are working to help us in this area of the gut. We have what's known in biology as a symbiotic relationship with all of this bacteria. And what that means is, in plain English, is we have an arrangement where the gut bacteria that we like is able to get nourishment from the food that we're eating. It really loves sugars. It loves different starches from different fruits and vegetables, loves fiber, right? That's why we're all trying to eat more prebiotic fiber. All that means is that there's different fibers in the foods that we eat that can't be broken down by our digestive system through that digestive process in the mouth and in the esophagus. So it's left behind for all of these good bacteria. And as a thank you, the gut bacteria help us to digest a lot of the things that we would think of as being anti-nutrients. So some of the things that come through on the different seeds that we're eating, some of the different defenders of the plants that we're eating, we have bacteria that actually munch on those and through different chemical processes turn them into different compounds that are actually useful in our body. However, these little guys that are in our large intestine, they're quite sensitive. They like their world exactly the way that it's been for hundreds of thousands of years. It's like a little city. And if we're quite healthy, it's a very happy city, right? Lots of flowers and white picket fences. Everyone says hi to their neighbors. Everyone gets along the way that they're meant to. However, once we introduce a lot of processed foods, things like coffee, which is essentially like an earthquake in your gut, maybe a tsunami, depending on how your body digests coffee. But all of these different elements and things like gluten and refined sugar, once they get into town, it's not so nice anymore. It essentially becomes, if you've heard me say it before, like Gotham City. So the bad sugars move in, and as they move in, they bring the motorcycle gangs. No offense to motorcycle gangs, just go with the analogy here. And they bring in mafia gangs and all of these other bad guys, and they're fighting it out for territory. And all of these nice little bacteria are like, this is not the place for me anymore. You're not providing me with the food. There's too many dark clouds. There's too much smog, like California, LA in the summertime kind of smog happening in your gut. And they can't survive anymore. So they move out. And the place is totally recolonized by all of these bad bacteria. Now, the real issue and the reason that so many of us experience chronic bloating and other, gas and all of the other digestive problems, and it happens chronically over years, and it's so difficult to get rid of, is because once we have this overgrowth of bad bacteria and fungus and other things that are happening there, they like to stick around. They don't like to leave so easy. And it can happen. How many of you experience much better digestion just from going through the 90-day challenge, right? So it can happen, but it's something that needs to happen over time, and we really need to be consistent with it. Because once we start to reintroduce the good bacteria, the guys that we want in there, the guys that help us to digest our food and kill off all of the anti-nutrients and make it into something good, the bad guys are going to fight back. And if we, at this point, reintroduce a lot of sugar, especially processed sugar, or we go out and we celebrate on the weekend, so we have this big tsunami wave of alcohol that comes into the environment, or, we reintroduce some foods that we know our gut doesn't like from using the food timeline, then the bad guys get almost like they get weaponized, and then they can fight back. So we really want to be consistent over time and clear out the environment over the course of a few months so that the good guys stand a chance of getting their colonies strong enough that the bad guys then want to leave. Now, two really interesting points about this. One, do you remember maybe like week 9 of your challenge? Did any of you have the kind of dream where everything was going well, you were going about your normal dream, maybe you were like naked in the office, or maybe you were flying, I don't know what you were doing, and then suddenly you were being chased by like a giant donut, or you were like in a torture chamber and you were tied up and someone was trying to force feed you a brownie and you were like, no, I don't want it, I'm in spring, you can't make me. Anyone remember that? It's similar kind of dreams, right? At least there definitely are at least a handful in each of my challenges. So why is that happening? It's happening because the bad guys are being starved out of there. They're being, pushed into these tiny corners of your gut, and it's not really hospitable, and they're starving. There's nothing left for them to eat. And then they're like, we got to do something. We got to do something. We had this good flow of sugar happening, and now it's not coming back anymore. We used to have wine coming in every single night, and it was creating all of this nice candida for us to set up camp on, and it was killing off all of those, happy guys. So then we had all of this nice substrate where we could build, and that's not there anymore. You know what we need to do? Let's send a chemical signal just while they're sleeping. They won't even notice. We'll just send that on up to the brain, maybe make it convincing enough for them to have just enough sugar that we have a fighting chance. So through your enteric nervous system, remember this whole system of nerves that goes all the way up from your esophagus down to your rectum, it sends out these nervous system messages, these little signals, and it also sends out chemical signals through the blood vessels surrounding your gut, and they get up to your brain and they give you these thoughts and ideas. Isn't that crazy? So like we're walking around and we're thinking, oh yeah, I'm a human. I have my autonomy. There's no one else living on me. And meanwhile, you have trillions of cells that are telling you what to do all of the time, and they're not even yours. So the next time that you have one of these dreams, remember, it's not you. It's these not so great bacteria that are living within your gut. And, they might have something to say about what you're eating. So,
Ariel, I love this topic so much. I think about it a lot. And I have some pictures I want to show you guys. See, gut bacteria, I think of gut bacteria as kind of being like a huge democratic process. So, when you are thinking about eating something, your gut bacteria are all like, they basically take like a referendum, and they're lobbying and they're using back channels. and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, you have some gut bacteria, and your gut bacteria that really likes junk, crappy fat, shitty sugars. You have some gut bacteria that really likes that. And the problem, of course, is that when you eat those things, then that gut bacteria breeds, and then they get to vote more. So, you know, the more of that you eat, the more they vote. And the more they vote, the more you eat. And so, but then you've got other gut bacteria that's really healthy, and it's there to break your proper good whole food down into amino acids and the different vitamins and minerals, and feed your body and nourish your body. But they're like nicer. They're like nicer. They don't say so much, you know, they'll vote, but they're not going to lobby. The sugar ones are out there banging on the door, you know, and then you've also got the immune system gut bacteria that's there fighting. You know, I have pictures. I just want to show you. Hold on a second now. So this is what some of the gut bacteria looks like, the sugar-eating gut bacteria. I don't know if you've seen these before, but this is roughly sugar-eating gut bacteria. That's roughly what they look like. Here's some more. Here's some. Oh, no, it's not them. There was more of them I had somewhere. Hold on. Oh, no. So these are healthy gut bacteria. These are the healthy gut bacteria. When you're feeding them, that's who you're feeding, and they're building you. And then you've got your immune system defense gut bacteria. And then now I want to remind you, here are the sugar gut bacteria. And so the next time you're thinking of eating some garbage, the next time you're thinking of scarfing down, you know, some refined sugar or some crappy oils, like the wrong kind of fats and stuff, this is who you're feeding. And the more you feed them, the more they'll breed, and the more they breed, the more they'll vote, and the more you'll eat. So instead, I want you to think about this. Every time you're eating, who are you feeding in there? Which political party are you contributing to? Are you contributing to this political party or this one who's going to defend you and protect? Look how healthy they look, and they're going to take care of you. And then, of course, you know, and this one, and of course, these ones. So that just some very highly scientifically researched photographs of representations of gut bacteria. They don't, you know, you have to have a very powerful microscope to see that that's what they really look like. But of course, I'm completely kidding, but I do want to make the point that in a very real sense, your gut bacteria is like that, like a big democratic process. And whatever it is that you feed will breed. And if they breed, then they'll vote. And that's where, how many of you, even right now, even if a craving can come up every now and again, that kind of stuff, how many of you feel strongly that the internal voting toward junk food is very different today than it was before you ever did WILDFIT? You had like completely different feeling in your body, right? Well, a big part of it is that you changed the gut bacteria. We immediately got you feeding the healthy ones, the defending ones, the powerful ones, and you started starving out the other ones. And sometimes you'll notice that you'll be like at an event or a party, and somebody will go, oh, you should have this one thing this one time. And all I'm saying is you can have it. WILDFIT's all about freedom. Just remember who you're feeding. Just remember that there's a meth addict in there that's waiting for you to stick that sugar down there. And, you know, you want to be careful of that. You might want to do it one day for a conscious reason. But remember that and remember also something else important. It's so important for you to get this. The breeding cycles for these things are in minutes and hours. It doesn't take them, like, how long does it take us? You know, we have to breed, we have to wait 9 months. Then we got to wait like, 15 or so years before even breeding can even begin to think. Not with them. They can do all of that in 24 hours. So you eat junk on Monday, you have changed the population, the voting population by Monday afternoon. And that's where some of your willpower can get eroded away. So this is such an important topic. And I hope that this carefully researched scientific electron microscope and microscope pictures will help you in your food decisions in the future. Ariel, back to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the visual additions to this talk. Guys, I have one, maybe 2 more things that I really want to share with you, and then we're going to get on into some questions. So once we move our food through our large intestine, right, that's essentially the end of the process. So it's moved through our entire digestive tract, and if we're really healthy, we don't notice necessarily that this is happening. However, if our gut health needs some work, then we definitely become aware of it. Now, of course, Eric has shared with you the different sorts of bacteria that we may have in there. But let's just talk about how those bad bacteria get in there and why so many people, even these fitness athletes, are getting so bloated, right? So first thing, let's think about indigenous cultures. Does anyone, just from following Eric, when he was visiting the Hadza people, when you were getting into, maybe you're studying Native cultures in your own country, how did they eat? You have any ideas? Love to see them in the chat. They're eating off the land for the most part, those who are welcome to still follow their indigenous ways and their natural culture. They're eating natural food. What else? Fresh food, right? Right out of the earth. And they're eating mono meals. They're eating seasonally. And they're eating with their hands, right? There's actual soil on that food. So really, let's highlight what's most important. And you guys have so many of them here. The first one is they're only eating once or twice a day. So they're eating one kind of food. Maybe it's just root vegetables, or maybe it is just protein, or maybe it is just fruit. So they're eating that mono meal. They're eating one food and they're eating it a couple of times a day, which means that the food has the opportunity to travel this entire digestive tract without being interrupted by another meal knocking on one of the doors. Because sort of this is what happens in our modern submarines, right? Or have a party going on in the stomach, everyone's mixing it up, and then someone knocks on the door and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm afternoon snack. No, I know lunch isn't over, but do you mind if we come in? And at a party, in the beginning, everyone's sort of awkward, right? So by the middle, everyone's loosened up and they're getting to know each other, and it's like a cohesive bunch. So then if you interrupt with afternoon snack, things are going to get a little bit awkward. It's like, are you digested? I don't know. I'm kind of digested. I wasn't finished. So it gets sort of awkward, right? Another thing about indigenous cultures is that they only eat when it's safe to do so, when it's calm and when they are still, because they're looking for threats and opportunities. If there's threats, they're not like, oh, I see you, bear. I'm just going to finish my potato here. It took me all morning to make. They have to make sure that everything is safe, that they're back at their cave or they're, in their camp, and then they would eat. Another thing that's so important is that, as I said, they have some dirt on their hands, because this is where we're introducing a lot of our good bacteria. If we are eating sterilized food the way that it is now, let's just think about this. If you're eating an avocado and you're living in North America, or let's say the northern part of North America, that avocado has probably traveled to you over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. It's made its way across countries in refrigerated trucks. It's been irradiated at the border. That basically means it's been interrogated against a wall and it's had radiation gone over it to make sure it wasn't carrying any foreign invaders. And then it sits in the grocery store underneath fluorescent lights until you choose to bring it home. So that avocado has a little bit of what is an avocado, but just the same way that we have our whole microbiome that is a part of us, natural fruits and vegetables have their whole system of bacteria that are theirs. So what are they really once that's killed off? What are they if they traveled in refrigerated compartments and all of their enzymes are dying? They don't have the same potency in our bodies. And we're losing a lot of the good guys because we're not eating them naturally. This is why I often recommend that people are taking supplemental trace minerals, whether you're taking them as a powder or as shilajit, humic acid. All of these ways are really great ways to get those microminerals that you would be getting from the soil into your body. And then, of course, their stimulants and sedatives in these indigenous cultures, they're used as medicine or in ceremony. So they're only rarely used. They're not waking up every morning and having a coffee and drinking an energy drink and then having some chocolate and then taking these sedatives when they have to calm down at night. right? They're just allowing their natural body's rhythm to take care of when they're awake and when they're asleep. And all of that happens with this enteric nervous system. This is where it begins. So now we compare it to modern life. And I'm sure you can do this yourself, but just to see that we eat continuously. We never stop eating. There's always a reason for us to be eating. And is that actually our choice? That's food marketers that are telling us that we need to be eating all of the time so that they can make the money. We're eating under stress. We're eating on the go. How many of you eat while driving a car? Thinking logically, is that a good idea? I know, yes, you're multitasking and technically you're saving time, but are you focusing completely on the road if you're worried about dropping mustard in your lap? And are you really allowing yourself to get into your rest and digest system if you're looking for threats and opportunities on the road? And all of our food is sterilized and it's irrigated and it's processed to have this enormously long shelf life, which means that it is inherently voting for the bad guys, if we're using Eric's democracy analogy. And then, of course, all of our stimulants and sedatives pass through our body like waves of tsunamis and earthquakes and these sedative clouds. So all of that also influences our gut. So what do we need to do to make it better? We essentially just eat as closely as possible to an indigenous way of eating. It's not just what we're eating, but where that food comes from, how it's grown, how is it harvested, how long between when it's harvested and when we eat it, right? And then also, how are we eating it? So what I would love for you to consider moving forward into the rest of this month is just to be aware of what's happening with your digestive tract. Are you eating in a way that facilitates full and complete digestion? Because if you're eating in a way that means that you're only getting half of that organic smoothie, or you're really only getting half of that very expensive salad, is it even worth it? You're losing money. That's not economical. So make a point to sit down and eat quietly, not in front of the TV, especially not while watching true crime, because then your body is on high alert and then you're trying to eat at the same time. So really just be considerate of your body over the next month in how you eat and start to notice how you might improve. And if you are experiencing rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, depression, schizophrenia, MS, ankylosing spondylitis, which is a nervous system disorder and an autoimmune disorder, asthma, eczema, migraines, Crohn's, anything like this, this all indicates that there's too many people hoarding the queue at your airport and making their way into your bloodstream when they shouldn't be there. Once all those bad guys make it onto the plane, they circulate around your body. Once they can circulate around your body, the bloodstream goes, I can't have you here. You might pollute one of my vital organs. I'm going to store you in a fat cell. And then once all of those toxins are stored in fat cells, the fat cells are like, I got you, buddy. And then it won't let them go until the gut is healed enough that there's no foreign invaders coming in again. And then the body feels comfortable letting them go. So really just be aware of what you can do for your body to start to feel better. And then, of course, there are some specific healing foods that you can incorporate into your diet on a regular basis. And I will put that list into your Facebook group. But just know that essentially, they have a lot of that indigestible fiber that we were talking about, that those good bacteria love to eat. And they're also low in sugar, because once you've had a little bit of that refined sugar, that's what the bad guys thrive on. So if you continue to feed them sugar on a regular basis, then they're going to continue to grow their colonies. Reduce stress. And then the final thing before we have a few questions is we need to give our bodies time. So with modern life, so often we feel like I'm on the go. I got to eat on the go. I got to be on the go. I got to be reading the news. I got to be catching up with multiple people at a time. I have to be watching the TV while on Facebook and also trying to have a conversation with my family. Like, we think that we need to be very busy and that everything needs to happen quickly. I am training myself out of needing immediate gratification. That is a skill unto itself. But the more that we can practice that and recognize, if I want to heal my gut, that actually depends on regrowing these fingers that have been chopped off by sugar. And it takes a while to regrow a finger in the gut, not on your hands. So we really want to give our body at least 3 to 6 months to enable these changes to take place. So if you've just finished your challenge and you're still not seeing all of the weight dropping off that you would like, or you're not seeing all of your symptoms moving away, or you're still experiencing some brain fog, not frog. I was looking at a French name and I said frog. Isn't that funny? So, so if you're still experiencing brain fog, then we want to make sure that we recognize, oh, my gut is healing. It's just going to take a little bit more time, and give ourselves the opportunity to fully heal. Make sense? I know it's a lot of information relatively quickly. I see many of you scribbling notes. If you've taken notes, share them with the group, because it gives everyone an opportunity to see your perspective and maybe something that they might have missed. And if you didn't take notes, no problem. You're going to get this recording. So, who has questions?
I have a couple of questions that were submitted on the chat.
Fabulous.
I know that we are running out of time, so you just let me know how much time you have. I know that you have a busy day today, but the first one was, Ariel, it is normal that mucus comes out with the other stuff. She didn't say that, but I will when you poop. Because like, I don't care saying poop.
We got to talk about poop if we're
I
talking
know.
about our digestive tract, right? So, really, the only times that we would see a significant amount of mucus that you notice it apart from the rest of what you're passing in your stool is if there's a lot of inflammation in your gut, or if you are doing something like a candida diet where you're trying to get rid of a lot of the mucus that would be formed by candida and unhealthy bacteria. So if you're seeing it on a consistent basis and you're not actually making an effort to do any kind of fasting or a candida cleanse, then probably your gut could use some more TLC, and you probably want to revisit your food timeline in order to just clear up if any of the foods that you're eating are causing inflammation or digestive distress. All right.
And I think that you have also a 9-day detox that is starting today, started yesterday, today, that is going into that deep fasting, detoxing of the bad bacteria. So if you are interested, I will put the Instagram from Ariel and Eric at the end, and you can follow Ariel and see her detox. The next question is Catherine. She's saying, are fermented foods a good option?
So when it comes to ferments, there's a couple of things we want to keep in mind, and it also depends on where you are at with your healing process, right? Because if you are noticing that you still have a lot of digestive distress, you probably still have a lot of bad guys in your gut. So if you're having something like kombucha or kefir or yogurt with sugar in it or something like that, even coconut yogurt, they are going to carry with them not only good bacteria, but also bad bacteria. It's very rare that good and bad bacteria exist in isolation. We need, like, for example, we need a certain amount of candida in our gut, but we just don't want it to get overgrown, right? So when we introduce those fermented beverages, they come in and often they have sugar. If you read the label, you'll see there's sugar in them. So what is that sugar going to feed? Is it going to feed the good bacteria? No, it's going to feed the bad bacteria that is in that product. So are those kinds of drinks better than soda? Yes, absolutely. If it's a question of one or the other and you want a bubbly drink, that is certainly something that I would introduce. However, if you're still trying to heal your gut and that's a main priority, not a great idea. A fermented food that I will get on board with is fermented cabbage. Cabbage on its own contains a lot of fiber that is very good for your good bacteria. But when you ferment that cabbage, the juice of that is also a primary nutrient that the cells of your digestive tract, all of those little villi, need to regrow. So if you're going to have something, maybe it is sauerkraut or kimchi or something like that. However, the fermented beverages that contain sugar and things like that, I would probably stay away from unless you followed your food timeline and you know that it doesn't bother you and you also know that your gut is quite healthy.
Okay, do you have time for one or two more?
Yes.
Okay, this next one is from La. She was asking about your amazing analogy about the headquarter and the tsunami, and she want to hear a follow-up from last call that you were telling her about the people that found the research and that sometimes are like not the best people. She was saying that she's confused still how coffee can be a tsunami, and in some studies from universities that she already checked are not founded by the bad guys, are still able to extend life and diminish numerous types of cancer. So she's wondering your opinion on that controversy that still is there.
So I would love for you to go back to those studies and just notice who are the participants that take part in those studies. Are they people that consume coffee on a daily basis? Or are they done on mice or other studies or study animals that would never have had coffee and then they have coffee for a very short period of time, right? Or is it people who do not have coffee because they would need to have that as the group to begin with in order to get their results, and then they start to have small amounts of coffee? Because this is really what we're talking about with indigenous cultures, is that those, like even ancient Africans would have coffee beans, green coffee beans, as a part of a ritualistic ceremony to give them more energy when they had to stay up for days at a time or run long distances, right? They were using it as a drug. We are using it as a stimulant on a daily basis. And that's where it really starts to create problems. Because if we go back to the enteric nervous system, when we introduce a stimulant, and we know that coffee is a stimulant, to our digestive tract, it shakes all of the nerves, right, on a continual basis. And it also shuts off certain chemicals that we need to rest and digest. And it sends all of our blood out to our extremities, head, arms, legs, so that we can fight or flight. So if you're having coffee and then you're having your breakfast, or you're having coffee with breakfast, you're not going to fully digest that breakfast because you're sending all the blood to your extremities instead of into your digestive tract. So that's the thing that I would really love to focus on. And then also the fact that if you're providing an earthquake every now and again in order to benefit cells or shrink cancer or anything like that, then the trade-off might be worth it. But if you're introducing those earthquakes every day, multiple times a day, then it's significantly going to affect your gut biota.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, before we close, what is your advice? This is from Marcia. What is your advice on probiotics after the challenge, especially when we are not getting things out of earth while living WILDFIT?
So probiotics can be challenging. I recommend them to my clients for like an acute issue. So if they're struggling with, any of the like irritable bowel diseases and things like that, if they're getting significant candida symptoms, if we know that there's a lot of irritation that's interrupting their life, then yes, having probiotics introduced for a short-term basis can be very beneficial. However, you want to get the best quality possible. You want to get them in a refrigerated form, and you want to get them in double capsules, because remember what we said about the party in the submarine in your stomach. It's an acidic environment. Things are like shaken up a lot. So the bacteria that can survive in your gut can't survive in the stomach. So we have to make sure that they have a hard capsule on the top that can endure that party and then make it through into the gut where they can then proliferate. So really, that's something important to keep in mind. And also that probably about half of them are going to die off. So if you're going to use them, use a lot of them, you know, use double, maybe that's what's recommended, and for a short term, because it's like any other supplements that we recommend. Your body is so efficient that if you are doing the work to introduce the probiotics, then the body doesn't need to work so hard to cultivate its own natural microbiome. And if we look at the strains of bacteria that are introduced in the probiotics, they're only the ones that are the most hardy. They're the ones that will be most likely to survive their journey down into the intestines. So we want to remember that, like variety that we're looking for in food, the variety of our gut biome is immense. The more variety that we have in our gut biome, the better shape we are going to be in, the more vitality we are going to have. So it's great to have them, but they're not a replacement for eating the right kinds of fibers and eating in the proper order and taking the time to rest and digest.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody that has stayed over. Thank you, Ariel, for staying over and answer some of those questions. To
Thanks,
wrap
Joanna.
up, thank you, everybody, for coming and staying engaged. Remember, the ones that are joining the Wilder Body, we start next Monday. And the next Back to Spring is October 4th. So keep that in mind. And then for you guys, just to know, I'm putting Eric's Instagram in the chat. Remember that Eric manage his own Instagram, so you can actually text him directly there. And I'm also putting Coach Ariel's Instagram. Make sure that you're following her too. And then if you have any thinkings or questions about her detox related to this gut health topical, make sure that you message her and take advantage of that amazing program. Thank you, everybody. Please keep engaged on the Facebook group, sharing your recipes, your wins, your questions, and we will see you guys all in the next check-in call. Okay?
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
you.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
And
Thank
good luck,
you.
Jojo.
Awesome
Bye,
call.
everybody. Have a good day.
Oh, look at that.
Last time that you see me pregnant, probably. So
Well,
bye-bye.
good luck.
Bye, Jojo.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Good luck, much happiness.